In a year that may go down as one of the best in gaming history, it could be very difficult for an indie game to stand out. Cuphead's unique, highly technical and simply jaw-dropping visual style made sure that it stood out from that illustrious crowd. Surprisingly though, Cuphead isn't just a pretty face, there's some tough substance behind that perfectly crafted veneer. Welcome to Wreckpoint, my name's Dan and let's see why you should die and die again in the world of Cuphead. Cuphead is a 2017 boss run game developed by Studio MDHR, a small Canadian studio made up of two brothers. The game puts you in the shoes of the titular Cuphead, and after making some foolish decisions at a casino, you're tasked to retrieve soul contracts from the residents of the world around you. The game's aesthetics are inspired by the 1930s cartoons from people like the Fleischer brothers. Considering this rather family-friendly styling, it is strange to say that Cuphead is a brutally difficult boss run game, with a bullet hell element similar to that of Contra. This all combines into a completely unique experience that you won't find in any other games. Studio MDHR didn't just go for an ambitious style that we haven't seen in video games before, they absolutely nailed that style and did something really impressive with it. Let's start with just a screenshot. Look at this shit. It's already stunning, the variations of colour without a sense of clashing, the depth of the bloody thing, you can see 3 distinct levels, the background, the main actors and the very foreground. Beyond just being the style of, 1930s comics, it also elicits a similar feeling to a stage play. This reinforces that 1930s aesthetic it's going for. Every element of this scene before us is not just goddamn beautiful, it also melds together with a cohesive sense of identity. Now, when it's all stood still, this game looks beautiful, but when you get it moving again, the whole experience comes alive. You can see that the animations for every character and moving object on screen have been meticulously crafted. Everything moves with such an effortless and smooth flow, but also an abundance of personality. That is perhaps the most important part of all of this. The characters don't really speak in Cuphead, but through their rich and numerous animations, each and every one feels like they have an identity, and it's riveting to look at. There were times where I died in this game just because I stopped and stared at the way that the boss was dancing around the screen. I don't think that graphics can make a good game. I think you need gameplay as well. But style, and style of this caliber, sure does come close. I mean, there's a reverence for animation in this game that just isn't on display in any other game. For example, you know how in a cartoon, you can predict which book the character is going to pick out from a bookshelf because it's brighter and a bit better drawn than all the others. That's like the levels in the overworld. They move just a little bit differently, so you know it's a level and not just part of the environment. These little touches add a sense of authenticity to the experience, like the audio design. The sounds are upbeat and in the style of the period, while the sparse dialogue is crackly and over the top. And the sound effects are appropriately slapstick. Furthermore, beyond just aesthetics, 1930s cartoons had a darker and more surrealistic tone than what we're used to today, and this game's story elements and general presentation captures that tone perfectly. The dark tone I just mentioned is perhaps the link the game makes to its gameplay style, because Cuphead is a challenging game. The majority of the time you will be taking on bosses. Now the foundation of the satisfaction here is the simple tools you are given to tackle the many obstacles in this game. You can jump, dash, shoot, parry, and some super abilities. Your gun can change, and there are some abilities to unlock later, but the core movement and shooting just feels so crisp and responsive that when you are faced with an intimidating foe, you're never blaming the controls for your failure. You can use these core tools against a bunch of highly varied bosses. Despite their variation, they all scratch a similar itch. That itch of, I'm going to watch what you do and how you kill me over and over, but slowly and surely I will learn your tendencies and I will eventually beat you. At its worst, this kind of gameplay can be simple trial and error, but in Cuphead it feels more like a boxing match, slowly working out your opponent and exploiting their weaknesses. There are some random elements to every boss. This is usually a good thing, making sure you are not just following a pattern. However, there are a few times that when it crosses over into frustrating. such as with randomised platforms that can really screw you. Despite this, most of the time Cuphead feels like a satisfying and fair challenge. The core gameplay is the star of the show for Cuphead, but there are some really smart peripheral elements which help raise the level of the entire experience. For example, beyond just the boss levels, there are run and gun levels that play like a very hard platformer. They aren't quite as good as the bosses, but they help to keep the experience fresh. Furthermore, there is an overworld where you pick your levels and bosses. This isn't just a nice thing to look at, it also means that you generally have an option of where you are going to go next. Importantly, if you get fed up with one challenge, you can always go try something else for a while and come back to it later. Finally, the unlockable guns, passive abilities and supers lend the game a nice little sense of progression. Cuphead is a game that blew me away from the moment I saw it, but I never expected it to actually be this good. The visual style is impressively cohesive, the animations are shockingly meticulous and brimming with personality. All of this along with a core gameplay that manages to be challenging and charming. I threw my controller a fair amount of times, but I could never stay angry at this game, and I was always excited to pick it back up again. If that sounds good to you, go get yourself a copy of Cuphead as soon as possible. Or, if you've played it, let me know what you thought in the comments below. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to subscribe for a new game recommendation every week. Cuphead is the reason I took a break for a couple of weeks. It took me so much longer to beat it than I thought it would. But next week, we're going back to something a little familiar.